Welcome back to the 1620 Today podcast. I'm your host, Jack Gately, with our co-host, Beth Gately.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for being here today, Beth.
Sure.
And today we're talking about the Pilgrim Power plant and the plan by Holtec, which is the company which is decommissioning the power plant to dump into the bay approximately 1 million gallons of radioactive wastewater from the plant itself. And we thought that there'd be no better guest to talk about that than the Massachusetts Lobstermen Association. Pretty much everybody in Plymouth, if you've lived here long enough, you know a lobsterman, right, Beth?
Sure. I know a few.
You know a few. And so today we have Beth Casoni. She's the executive director of the Massachusetts Lobstermen Association. Thanks for coming today, Beth. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to getting into the nitty-gritty of it.
Let's do it. So we're coming off a rally that was Saturday. Tell us what happened on Saturday.
On Saturday, we had a collective effort by Paul Quintal from the Plymouth Cruises, Tom O'Reilly from the Plymouth Lobstermen's Association, myself from the Massachusetts Lobstermen's Association, Diane Turco from the Cape Downwinders, Regina Silva from the Whale and Dolphin Conservancy, and we put together a rally to bring awareness to Holtec's plan to dump over 1 million gallons of radioactive water into Cape Cod Bay, and we had a great turnout. We had over 200 people come down with signs. We were standing shoulder to shoulder with some people at some of our fisheries management meetings that were on the other side of the issue. So this is an issue bigger than one organization, and it was a great turnout. We had Channel 5 there, fishermen, there were some politicians, some candidates running for some state offices. And it was just really, it was heartwarming, and it was also long overdue. We need to have more of these rallies to bring more people into the fold, because it's going to take more than one organization to bring the awareness up to the state and federal level.
And there were also business people there.
Correct. Yes. Businesses, restaurants, local restaurants were there to support it. Wood Seafood is a great supporter of the commercial fishing industry. And, you know, I can't say it enough. We need to do this more. We need to get the message out there. If 200 people showed up, Cape Cod Bay is home to 1 million people. We need to make it more than 200 people.
So this was right down on the town wharf, right next to Woods, where, you know, the commercial fisherman wharf, basically. And let's just dive right into it, like, from your association's point of view. How does this affect your membership?
So our membership, we have a wide breadth of members. They range from Canada to as far south as North Carolina. And in Massachusetts, Plymouth is home to over 60 commercial lobstermen, and it is the #2 port in Massachusetts for landings of lobsters. They land over 1.6 million pounds of lobsters annually. And the impact to our members is not just the Plymouth area. We look at it as the larger picture of the Gulf of Maine, which Cape Cod Bay is part of. And the Gulf of Maine is home to over 5,000 commercial lobstermen from Cape Cod Bay up to the Canadian Maritimes. And the impacts of this, you know, and I say this with, you know, great reservations. If I worked for the Maine Lobstermen's Association and I knew that Pilgrim was going to dump 1 million gallons of radioactive water, and they were successful in dumping that, I would be boycotting Massachusetts lobsters. And that is our greatest fear and concern, because the perception to consumers is that the seafood would be tainted from Massachusetts. And the local businesses in the community, Plymouth at large, would be greatly impacted, because this perception, once it's out there, how do you go back and say, oh, 1 million gallons of radioactive water isn't really going to hurt you?
And I think that's a really important issue, because it seems as if this is really playing out on two, like, parallel planes. One is the real life pollution, what could actually happen to the ocean and to the organisms that live there, whether it's lobster or minnows or sharks or whatever it happens to be. And then there's this other, like, thing that's in our mind that it may or may not even be true, but it affects value. In real estate, we talk about this all the time. We call it stigma, right? Where you have a house that's been, like, haunted, or there was a horrific crime there, and there's really nothing wrong with the property. It's just that people think in their mind that there's something wrong with that house. Bo Radley lives there. I'm not going to buy that house. The famous character from Boo, is it Boo? From To Kill a Mockingbird. Thank you.
I thought you just made up a new country artist.
No. That would be a good name.
Yeah.
So I think it plays out on both of those fields, and that's why there were representatives from my industry, real estate, because people don't want to be like buying a house on the ocean that has radioactive water, because that sounds really bad. Like, and then from a real life point of view, you don't want your kids swimming in that.
That's right. And, I grew up in Marshfield, in the Brant Rock section of Marshfield. And at a young age, we were shown a movie back in the early 80s, and it was called The Day After. And after seeing that, I think I was in 6th or 7th grade, and looking across the bay at Pilgrim, I was terrified. And then eventually, as time goes on, you kind of forget about it, and it just becomes part of the scenery. But radioactivity in the ecosystem isn't going to help anyone. And, in Cape Cod Bay is home to the largest aggregation of the North Atlantic right whales anywhere in the world. And right now, our commercial lobstermen have a closure for the protection of these right whales. There's over 9,000 square miles closed in Massachusetts for the protection of the North Atlantic right whales. And how does dumping 1 million gallons of radioactive water have any common sense into Cape Cod Bay, where these animals are now? There's 4 mother calf pairs out there, and the food source that they depend upon, that's why they come to Cape Cod Bay. So it's mind-boggling on a larger scale, and I think the public is now starting to really wake up that this is really a possibility.
Now, there's only about 340 right whales left.
That's out for debate.
Okay, well,
360, 350, 340, you pick a number.
Under 400.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And to be fair, and to a background for our audience, the Massachusetts Lobstermen's Association and the right whale folks don't always see eye to eye on any number of different things. So the fact that I know you already mentioned it, but as a backgrounder, just to reinforce, the fact that you're coming together on this issue is that must be different.
It's a good thing. And, we work together at these meetings that the federal government holds for the right whale conservation. And when we leave there not feeling good, we've done our job. Consensus is a hard thing to come by when you're on opposite sides of the aisle on any issue. And to come together at this rally on Saturday and stand with Regina from the Whale and Dolphin Conservancy on the same side of an issue speaks volumes.
Back a long time ago, I used to work for the congressman from this district, and a long time ago, and he had this knack for actually bringing people together. He was from a particular political party, but he brought other people from the other party together on conservation issues. And he had this, when I was there Saturday, I really felt like his spirit there, because I could see, he would tell a story of how he would travel to all these other ports across the country as chairman of the Fisheries Committee. He'd go to Alabama and Seattle and Alaska, and the congressman out there would say, Gary, we have a beautiful port here. This is the most beautiful port in the country. What a great harbor we have. Thank you so much for coming. And Gary would shake his head and say, it's really nice, Congressman. And then he'd fly home and see what he called the very special place that we call home here, southeastern Massachusetts. And he really felt that there was not a promise, but more like a covenant that we were here to protect this spot, not just for now, but when we're not here. Right. And there's a reason why his name is on the sanctuary out in the bay.
That's right. And, I think Paul Quintal said it best at a rally we held earlier in March. And he said, over 50 years, we've learned a lot on what not to do to our ecosystem that we all depend upon. They used to dump all their trash. They used to dump all their bilge waste. Everything was dumped into the ocean. I mean, there was a trash dump off of New York. I mean, we've come a long way, and to still have this as a viable option to dumping 1 million gallons of radioactive water, Congressman Studs would probably not be happy. He'd be at the charge taking care of this.
He would have been there Saturday.
Absolutely.
I think he kind of was.
And we've gotten great political support. Congressman Keating has been great. Senator Markey, Senator Warren, they've been really working hard on this at the federal level. And, you know, the Nuclear Commission is not an easy charge to change. And I know that there's legislation at the state level that's being heard later today on this.
That's right, the hearings
Susan
today.
Moran, Senator Moran, and, you know, we're going to be giving public comments on that too.
So you're headed up to the State House after this.
No, in a world of virtual travel, it's a lot easier to get on your computer.
Especially
and
since
I,
it just reopened, right?
you know, I get sick of Zoom meetings, but in a world of convenience and sitting in traffic getting in and out of Boston, it's a lot easier to get on a Zoom public
Excellent.
hearing.
Well, we thank you for coming down from Marshfield today, down to beautiful Plymouth, to our new studio, and thank you so much for coming high above Town Square here in Plymouth. So let's play the devil's advocate for a few minutes. And I had this chat with my son, and wow, can he argue?
Yeah.
He could be a lawyer. He's a lawyer in training, and he said, "But Dad, didn't they put the power plant there to take the water in and out of the ocean? And like, hasn't this happened before?" And then he said, "Dad, 1 million gallons, but how big is Cape Cod Bay? I mean, how many millions and hundreds of millions of gallons are in the bay?" And I said, "Oh, those are good questions. I'll probably ask on Tuesday morning." So when I'm looking at it here, I think there's, and I'm no expert about the power plant, but I think there's basically 3 types of water that are involved. There's the water that they pull in to cool off the steam and send back out in 10 minutes. And that they haven't done since they shut it down a couple of years ago. Then there's the water that they actually boil for the steam that spins the turbine and then gets cooled down and sent back through the system. And then there's the water that's in the cooling pool where they put the spent fuel rods. So what water are we talking about? Because they have dumped this in the past. In 2017, 2013, 2011. How is this different now? Is this just like a political thing? Is this just some headline that people are like, wow, that this is no really different than in the past? Not because you did something in the past it was right, but why now? Why is this getting a lot? I don't remember anybody protesting in 2017 or those other years.
And I'll follow you in that sentiment. I'm no nuclear expert and I'm no volume expert. Cape Cod Bay is a large body of water, and just to go to the turbidity of it, we've had some areas in the most deep bowels of Cape Cod Bay off of Barnstable where there was no water flow, and we had a very low dissolved oxygen scenario happen in 2019. And you would think that the tides would have turned it up and made it go away. It didn't. So we had a die-off of animals in that area, and the state responded quickly. So Cape Cod Bay doesn't have a huge flushing factor like the Bay of Fundy, will you? Long Island Sound is similar to Cape Cod Bay. If you think about the tides along the inner bay, they're not 20-foot tides. They get lower and lower as the bay goes further south and southeast.
Well, you can attest to that, right? Because of the seaweed at our beach, right?
Yeah.
You see the same seaweed over again.
Exactly.
Now, you mentioned Bay of where?
The Bay of Fundy up in Canada.
That's where they have the giant
30-foot tides.
Right.
And, you know, I've had the privilege of going up there and fishing out there, and it is something to see. But back to the water in the power plant, it's my understanding that it's the water in the pools that are storing the spent fuel rods. And they've 3 options. They can dump it, they can evaporate it, which is just reversed osmosis, and they're just going to evaporate it into the ecosystem, and then it's going to rain, and we're going to have radioactive rain. And then they can ship it out, and the most expensive is shipping it out, and the cheapest is dumping it. So, you know, they're looking at their bottom line, and unfortunately will pay the price for that for eons.
So in the prior years, they were only flushing out a smaller amount. It was only like, 300 and 350,000 gallons or so. And that was the water that they used for steam. From what we understand now, they're planning on flushing that water and the spent fuel rod water.
That's my understanding. And,
I haven't read, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I haven't read Holtec say anything other than that. They haven't refuted that claim.
and what are they going to do after they dump this 1 million gallons? They have to keep those spent fuel rods cool forever. So that's a bigger question. What are they going to do with those? Decommissioning doesn't mean taking it down and making it go away. It just means taking it offline as a power source.
What is the association's position as to what should happen?
We would like them to follow suit with the Vermont power plant, the Yankee power plant in Vermont, and ship it out and have it properly disposed of. Ship the water out and do it the right way. Spend the money and don't pollute it in our backyard. And I said this at the rally, if it's not that harmful, take it to your house, put it in your rivers, and put it in your pools and swim away.
When they send it to Texas, I imagine there's some transportation risk. I mean, that's like 2,000 miles or whatever it is. Right. And what does Texas do with it?
I'm not an expert on that. I don't know. I mean, I would be speaking out of school on that.
Okay. But of course, it would be kind of irresponsible. It would be unethical it would be immoral for us just to send our problem to Texas just because it's big and they have space for it. That seems to be like,
Changing seats on the Titanic, maybe?
Yeah, right. That's a good analogy. Yes, exactly. Now, I remember this was way before 9/11, but maybe 93, 94, I got a VIP tour of the power plant. And we went down to the donut. We actually went into the control room with the people operating the plant. I mean, and then we went to the top. I literally, there was nothing between me and a metal little chain from taking a dip into the pool, right? And this was some tour, which I'm sure you could never do after 9/11.
That's for sure.
When I'm thinking about it, the water that they flushed before, the steam water, like, I'd hear them on that, but I would never think about throwing the water from the spent fuel rod pool into the ocean. I mean, that's just like, that to me is just crazy. Because for those of you who haven't been to the plant or haven't think about it, it's just like a giant swimming pool that literally glows, and in it are the spent fuel rods. That seems like an escalation that, has this been ever done before at any other of the power plants?
Not to my knowledge. And, Cape Cod Bay, like I said, is a very sensitive ecosystem. And the fact that we have the North Atlantic right whales here speaks volumes for how healthy the ecosystem is. They give birth down in the southern waters off of Florida, Georgia, and they come up here and they feed their calves. And the food source is a small little copepod, and that feeds a plethora of other sea animals. And to think that 1 million gallons of radioactive water is going to be dumped, we don't know the consequences.
And so you don't want to treat your own ocean like a petri dish.
There you go.
Yeah, life's not a rehearsal. So, could you say that again? What does the whale feed on?
It's a copepod. It's a small little krill. It's probably the smallest, little teeny things. I mean, you'd think these animals would eat big fish. They're plankton. They're filter feeders. So they're, when you look out on the oceans, and this is what I've learned through my job, and you look at the North Atlantic, and it's dark blue, and it's the dark greens, that's a rich, healthy ecosystem full of sea life, full of food. If you look at the southern waters where it's crystal clear and blue and tropical, that's devoid of food for these large animals. That's why they have their babies down south and they come up to the northern waters to feed them.
So that's where you want to go. You want to go to the...
Yes, where there's nothing in the bottom. No, but that's an amazing, I never really thought of it that way, but it's great. It's amazing.
So they have the babies and then they come up here to feed. Okay, I get that.
That's why we have such good whale watches.
I guess.
exactly.
And now here's your association. You're making all sorts of concessions to help these right whales live, and that's hurting your members in the pocketbook. It's hurting us when we want to buy a lobster roll on a summer day, and now all of a sudden here comes the power plant, and you're saying, whoa, wait a second, we've been doing all that, we've been taking a hit, and all of a sudden that you're going to go out here and do that. Your membership must be like, what the?
Yeah, they're pretty, we can't make this up. I mean, some days I just shake my head at the lack of common sense on some large issues like this. When we're fighting at every step of the way for the fishing industry to maintain their businesses, because these are businesses. They're not just pretty lobster boats in the harbor.
Right.
They're businesses that pay substantial taxes, that create revenue for the local economies. And to have a larger business come in and say, yeah, we're just going to dump it right there, and with no regard for anyone, it's a shame.
You kind of feel like one of those little krill.
Exactly. Yeah, poached.
And those lobstermen are like the hardest working. Just, it's amazing to watch them out there.
And they're family businesses. It's not just the lobstermen, and there's lobster women that
Right.
prefer to be called lobster men.
Sorry, yes.
That's okay. And they're family businesses, and it's an integral part of their family unit. And when it affects the business, it affects the households, it affects everything.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Your membership, your average member, how many boats do they own? How many employees do they have?
For the most part, we have a membership base of, we call them day boats. They leave the harbor every day. They come back at the end of the day. There's the Atlantic offshore lobstermen. Those are the larger boats that go out to sea for 5 to 7 days at a time. So our members will, you have the captain. He owns the boat. He owns the permit. He can have 1, 2, 3 crew members, but then he's also buying his bait. He's buying his fuel. He's buying his traps. It's that ripple effect. And, when we talk about the impact of the seafood industry collectively, in Massachusetts, it's an $800 million a year industry. And the Gulf of Maine is a large provider of that local economic driver.
That guy that when you're on the beach, that guy that you see out there pulling the traps, he's bringing his boat back to the local harbor and his catch back to the local harbor, and he's sleeping in his bed. He's paying local property taxes, all of those things. He's a local business. It's not some big factory ship out there that's out there for 5 months or something where they package and everything.
That's right. So these are everyday people, and they are the salt of the earth, and some of them are saltier than others. And I do my best to fight on their behalf, because at the end of the day, I look at these boats and people think that they're just fishermen. They're more than fishermen. They're mechanics, they're electricians, they're plumbers, they're lawyers because they have to follow all the regulations, they're accountants. I mean, they're employers. So they have so much coming at them on a regular basis, because I see it and I hear it. And when something like this comes up, and you would think it would just be common sense to not do that, it's just one more stressor on the commercial fishermen.
So let's talk about the political response a little bit, and then we'll wrap things up. So we have a hearing today at the State House. You're going to attend virtually, which is probably better for the environment anyway. And the Holtec has promised that nothing is going to happen this calendar year. So I would imagine there could be something that could be done at the state level from a regulatory point of view with Governor Baker. But in the end, since it's not going to happen and this is his last year, could there be something done at the state level from a regulatory point of view this calendar year? And of course, whoever becomes governor in early next year. It's less than a year.
The legislation that's on the docket for today's hearing, I think, would definitely stop the discharge of radioactive water into Massachusetts waters. But mind you, Massachusetts water, Cape Cod Bay, to get from where Pilgrim is located, outside of state waters is a good thing, because it's almost 15 miles north. So the state water demarcation line is generally 3 miles from the coast out, but Cape Cod Bay has been deemed all of state waters. If Pilgrim were anywhere else, I wouldn't put it past Holtec or any other company to build a pipe, go right out into federal waters, because it might cost $1 million. It might cost them $10 million to ship it. So we're hoping that we can get our federal legislators, on board to really make this national. It's not just Massachusetts. They need to stop this as a viable option for discharging the radioactive water.
We haven't built a nuclear power plant for decades, and my uncle helped build the Pilgrim Power plant, and he was proud of it when he built it. It was a good union job, and we have many others that I imagine are going to be decommissioned. So on a federal level, this seems like, to the best of our knowledge, it's kind of like a guinea pig.
Exactly, and I've had conversations with some state agency employees that we work closely with, and I've asked them, like, what can we do, to get to the Nuclear Commission, and they basically said they're above God. So trying to get anything done or changed at that level will take an act of Congress, and like I said at the rally, I encourage everyone to call their state and federal legislators. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. And even if you called yesterday, call tomorrow. Keep calling, because I've learned in my career with the Mass Lobstermen, the squeaky wheel does get the oil.
The early bird gets the worm, or do you have a fishing phrase for that?
Oh, I don't know. The oily bait gets the lobster, I guess.
Is that the trick?
Yep.
I don't think she's going to tell us any lobster tricks.
They got their secret special sauce.
Right. So I totally lost my question, but that is true. But is it because the NRC is kind of, what do they call it, industry captured, and, seats roll over? You would think that the current administration in the White House would be amenable to your point of view.
I would hope so. And, I write a lot of letters, and I can see another letter in my future to the White House. We've written a lot of letters to the White House over the last 14 years on different issues, and this one's is big because, like you said, there's other nuclear power plants that are going to come offline.
Right.
And what are we going to be fighting this battle every other year or every 5 years as they come offline? Because it seems like they were all built around the same time, so their shelf life is going to expire all around the same time.
Okay. And we have other ones that are located on the coast like this?
Seabrook up in
There
New
we go.
Hampshire. Yeah, that's close enough.
That's near where you grew
Yep.
up? You used to swim? You could see the power
Yeah, it
plant?
was very close, yeah.
Yeah. The funny thing about Pilgrim is that you really can't see it when you're on the beach, and people wouldn't even know it's there. A lot of people don't even know it's there. But if we get that reputation for, that's where the radioactive, you don't go in the water, you're gonna glow. That's not going to be a good look.
No, not at all.
Lastly, I just want to ask you, aside from this issue, what is the health of the lobster fishery? Let's just say that this issue didn't exist. What is the overall health of the lobster industry in Massachusetts, or in the Gulf of Maine, as you call it?
So in Massachusetts, we have a very healthy, sustainable fishery. We have about 760 active commercial lobstermen. And in the Gulf of Maine, that's about 650 or 660 fish within the Gulf of Maine, from Cape Cod Bay up to the New Hampshire seaboard. And the resource, these lobstermen have implemented through fisheries management V-notching. They put back all the egg-bearing females, so a V-notch is on a egg-bearing female, so it's a proven breeder, so they protect that. We have a maximum size, we have a minimum size. There's different management measures for each lobster stock, and over the course of my time, the industry has consistently landed anywhere between 14 and 17 million pounds of lobsters.
Wow, all right. So, and you've been with the association for how long?
14 years.
14 years.
I volunteered.
Wow.
They kept me.
Voluntold.
Yeah.
So really the most important question of the interview, we want to end it here. Lobster roll, mayonnaise or butter?
I'm a butter girl.
Me too.
Whoa, that's two
Yep.
to one.
Two Beths like butter. Yep.
Yeah. I
Well,
totally
that
agree.
settles it. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
Beth
you, Beth.
Casoni, the executive director of the Lobstermen's Association. Thanks for joining us for the second episode of the 1620 Today podcast. I'm Jack Gately.
And I'm Beth.
High above our new studio in Town Square. Thank you very much for joining us, Beth.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next episode. Bye-bye.